I'm Ayse Oztuna Bozoklar, and I'm the founding partner of Ocas Bersin Turkey. And I'm very happy for this possibility to be on the Voices of the Future. And I hope all of our conversations will help many others to shed light on what actually, as humanity, we can achieve all together. Thank you for this opportunity, and it's a great gift. Thank you.
We are genuinely privileged and delighted to welcome a very dear friend, Ayse Oztuna from Istanbul, Turkey. We have worked together for the last 27, 28 years, and in my very early days in Dow Jones and Wall Street Journal, I arrived in Turkey, and Ayse was one of our first partners there. Since then, we have developed a friendship. We worked together in many cases. I've learned a lot from her, and I have been very grateful for all her contributions, her friendship, and basically being my go-to person in Turkey. Today, she's on Voices of the Future. She'll talk about everything to do with talent, with people, with the future of work, around assessments, around leadership, around boards, reinvention, trust, truth, ethics, all of these things, because she is indeed a broad-based coach, guidance counselor, cultural expert leader that I am very happy to have in my life. Ayse, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you, Tarık Bey.
Can you tell me when you last really, really laughed from your heart, from your gut? Can you think about that?
Last week, when we had a lot of, I think, trouble about my sort of like estate-related problems, so etc. etc. In London, it was a bit complicated with solicitors as well. So then we saw sort of like there was this on the billboard saying that Three Musketeers is on show. So I just sort of thought it was like my favorite book when I was really quite like, was I 7 years, 8 years, something like that. So it was like D'Artagnan, and we have to go and see this. So it was like I really had a great laugh about like the film was sort of like so Tamer was telling me that I haven't seen you laughing and sort of like enjoying because I probably was like reading that book like 5 times or something like that. And I was really quite like just having started reading actually. It was like my favorite because my elder brother it was his book actually. So it was like more the boys thing. But for me, it was like that love story. It was like passion. It was about camaraderie. It was just like, I don't know. It was like so. And last week in London, among all the troubles, it was like, I was like, I saw that and it just sort of like made me really like, so it was out of this life sort of, but really.
So I am
made me laugh. Excellent. With all that sadness, all that heavy weight and everything around me, every sort of like, and that actually also kept me thinking about this dilemma that is like what we are living.
Sure. So I am your D'Artagnan right now, okay? This is an interview, D'Artagnan versus Ayse. And I'll do this passionate love story about your life and everything else. And I will take out my sword and exactly. So
get the evils out of our way.
Absolutely. So we will be in this additional space. So I can start now. Hi, I'm D'Artagnan. I am one of the Three Musketeers, and we are here today to interview Ayse Oztuna as the second Musketeer, and life will go on. So we're going to be sharing Ayse's life stories and my life stories with my other two Musketeers in my life, and how I have to embrace challenges, how I have to, basically fight good against evil. And I do this all the time, and I do it with style, I do it with panache, I do it with, with a lot of fun. And so that's who I am, D'Artagnan. Okay, Aisha, can you please tell us who you are? I'm serious. The interview has started.
Well, you'll have to.
See that the entire Voices of the Future book is about stories. So this is a story. And this is your life story that makes you feel connected to your youth when you were a kid, and things that were playful and fun. Because I cannot just imagine you to be playful and fun when you were a little girl. You're probably sitting there reading a book while I was making a complete mess.
See, that is maybe the message, dilemma, I was so playful at one level, and I was so sad and so thoughtful and so philosophical at even that age, that I was the little consultant to my parents, seeing their situation with my father's situation, God bless him. So that really gave me a huge sense of responsibility, even when I was wanting to be so playful at the one level, and so like maybe lively, and really sort of like how to say, having a great sense of humor. I think seeing that in the midst of every darkness from my mother with her British sarcasm, having been born in London, I think gave me that sort of like interesting, how to say, combination of like from the darkest moments that light comes out, and that's why I'm just referring to the dilemma. And so I was both reading and sort of being philosophical, but at the same time like wanting to be so playful, and maybe having just in the midst of everything, just creating some opportunities of like being that, and then coming back to like, no, you have serious responsibilities. Even as a 6-year-old, you have to treat your parents, they are your first client. I don't know what I was thinking back then, but they definitely were like, how to say, my first, how to say, I don't want to call them patients, but really it was like me who was sort of like counseling them in a way. So that really was the first, I think, responsibility I felt. But within all of that was that sense of humor, that engagement that from time to time came out, but then had to be balanced out. And again, balance, I think, was a very key part of all of this, because that fundamentals were there with ethics, with integrity, with honesty, and the big rock solid foundation, I think, was given to me. But again, maybe being born in London and having to come back to Istanbul after their 10 years in UK was sort of, London was really quite a bit of another sort of like shaping my, how to say, sort of like, where do I belong, and from which part of the world am I, or maybe feeling at home with sort of like more international sort of like maybe business world, maybe that came from my father. So it was like a sort of like maybe I always refer to this like Turkey has this identity crisis. So have I. So like.
It's funny you say that, because I think in our modern world, and also where I'm living, and there are so many expatriates living here in Dubai, and they are from Lebanon, they are from Pakistan, they are from India, they are from other countries, and many people ask the kids, where are they from, and they are from Dubai. So as far as they're concerned, this is home. They can't really go back to Beirut because it's not where they are. So they all end up emigrating and stuff like that to other places, and this is becoming a very interesting dynamic in the world. Can you capture that little girl's moment and any other old memory that you may have that helped to inspire you? Apart from D'Artagnan, I know you like Three Musketeers. Anything else that inspired
Rumi was really, again, an early, at a very early age, again, seeing from especially my mother, reading Mevlana was also sort of another sort of like maybe philosophical and spiritual, I think, healing, probably I could call that. So that was always like, wow, what a sort of like wonderful way of like seeing, but how much I understood over the years and appreciated that wisdom. I think also gave me a lot of strength to go through the pain maybe that didn't originally belong to me, but I felt it, and I just probably that helped me maybe to develop my empathy, the emotional intelligence, and that connection within the completely disconnected world around me, which I constantly just was in a way going extra mile, running the extra mile to just create those sort of connections with concepts, with like from one end to D'Artagnan, to one end to Mevlana, or that that sort of like disconnectedness actually also didn't look so, how to say, natural, maybe, that I thought I had a role of bringing sort of pieces together, not only people, but
you?
pieces together. It could have
And
been my
that's
parents.
sure.
It could have been my other family members. It could have been me as a healing, angel being sent to my aunt later on. Just as I was 10, I was actually on a mission to go back to London, and God bless her. She left this planet Earth 3 years ago, and I really had the privilege of working with her through a difficult time. When I was 10, 11, 12 years old, every year I had to spend quite a bit of time, all my summers, on duty as a little healing angel. So, but within all of that, I was like, maybe seeing my mother reading Mevlana and then bringing that to my sort of like aunt. And I was having this discussion last week with a quite a wonderful sort of like fellow partner, reading about that, but also being taken to Findhorn, of all the places, in UK, in Scotland, in almost like, and going through the spiritual, very much shamanic looking sort of like processes or experiences with her as a very, very sort of young kid, actually. Did I make sense of it? That probably was like bringing in different parts of me alive, and later on maybe that they all started to fall into places, and I even went to India to search for like, and so that was a struggle, probably a constant struggle of like I always quote, like, I just sort of like, I don't search, I find. So it is just coming in front of me. So the next thing is really building on it. And it just, in fact, has then resonated with the search business, search intelligence, I call it. It just was all like coming together, connecting people, connecting ideas, connecting the possibilities, seeing the possibility within the midst of all these sort of darkness or sort of misfortune or problems, that we could always find a solution, that we could always sort of like shape the solutions or create the solutions or work with others to sort of like really pave the way. As Mevlana also says, the way will actually open up in front of you. And so it's that's the sort of maybe again bigger answer, but
No, it's actually a very meaningful answer because it helped to shape your early days. It helps, and a lot of the words that you have mentioned, I know you and I use it regularly. Things like connecting the dots, things like empathy, things like healing, nurturing, connection, which is effectively your life. For the last 30 years of your business life, you have been doing just that, connecting the dots, meeting people, empowering and engaging people. And in many cases, as a counselor, as a coach, you're healing them. So I think this really reflects beautifully in terms of how you have shaped your life and why you are today who you are. Comes from your very early days. One little more element in there before you respond. I know, sadly, your father suddenly had polio, and throughout his life, he was paralyzed. How did that affect you personally in terms of building your nurturing and your empathetic side, and really dealing with this kind of issue in your life at a very young age?
Well, he was at the probably peak of his career at that time, in his 30s, and it was like, of course, I'm just referring to as because I wasn't in this world when it happened, and the other part, they were both highly educated, sort of like people, both my mother and himself. So they were sort of like, of course, they had a promising life ahead of them. That's 1950s of Istanbul, as they actually were matched even to get married. And so my mother from Robert College and him from Galatasaray High School. It was like the French high school at that time. So, and having been educated as a architect, he was at, you know, like running from one project to another and speaking multiple languages and sort of like representing quite important clients. So it was like that actually story was quite, I think, moving, because I'm referring to it as a story because I was born into it, and I was born into the London phase of it, because then, of course, with all of that, all the hopes, all the promising life, they find themselves, and my mother actually having been given also possibility with high-level scholarships to go to Stanford at that time. And that is another thing when his parents, basically his mother, saying that I can't live if you travel to US without you. And then she's on a plane taking her husband to Oxford to a clinic when he's totally paralyzed. And then by the time they have to come back, his mother is passing away because of the sadness they have lived over that 10 years period. And of course, imagine the world not so connected, not the mobile phones, not the sort of like any possibility to really fly or sort of, so that was all limited. Let's basically see it in that sort of like level. So it was a lot of sort of like within that, he becomes, out of the 3 years healings and treatments and everything, and the professor at Oxford Clinic is an expert, and he believes in his talent more than maybe he any longer has that confidence within him, and God now opens another way. So that is sort of how he's in a way recruited as a disabled architect to John Lang, the big architectural firm, where his new challenge starts. And with that new challenge comes another opportunity, because he's not treated as a disabled architect who normally has more than 10 years experience at that time running his own architectural firm and having gone bankrupt totally in Istanbul. He's treated quite sort of like not in the proper way. But then comes the Disabled Neighborhood Project from Queen Elizabeth's Foundation. And because of my father, the firm wins the project. And then he's on BBC being interviewed, and the president at that time, Cevdet Suner, gives him the country's highest order of awards, saying that he on his wheelchair actually made us proud, and he was on the papers. So out of all of that sort of comes a big learning. So I always wanted to, with my own life, I always wanted to, because it was like some sort of like such a struggle, such a challenge. I was thinking that what can be so challenging, what can be so sort of difficult to go through, and my mother's side being an angel and always being supporting and giving birth to the three of us, and alone in London. And because she was the one who was born with a silver spoon, as they would say it, in her mouth, like why would you go to Stanford? You know, even you are number one in your Robert College class with sort of like mathematical first in the whole of that. But she basically gave away everything. She was the sort of like such an angel, really. That's how I could. So that all gave me, I would say, that what I call faith. Faith and maybe to see that possibility, because all of us sort of like we all go through difficult situations, and life is ups and downs, but we really how we react to it actually determines what actually is all about us. So that shapes us. So that is exactly, as long as we have the faith, as long as we have that honest and sometimes brutal sort of honesty, because many are giving up from that. But that's what I've seen in my parents. That's what I was born into, and that's what I actually probably inherited, or have been. That's been like my DNA. That I actually had to react with always honesty, and that wasn't easy. That was actually more difficult than I could ever imagine, that, because people could sort of like calling it adaptation, calling it sort of like creativity, calling it, they really, unfortunately, went into sort of like more like choosing to be spineless. Unfortunately, I will use this word, or to be more sort of like going for the darker sort of like preferences. And that's not good. So that's what I had to also face. So I believed in people more than they believed in themselves. I could actually summarize it as such. So I really had to work for my father to actually make him feel satisfied with his own sort of like life. Somehow I thought that was my duty to prove that, you know, as his daughter, as his only daughter, that I could actually give him something that actually would make him really feel that confidence, and that, how to say, I don't know, that maybe a connection to life.
Fast forward, Ayse, into the time you graduated and you were a young 21-year-old. You read psychology at college, at university, correct?
Yes.
No. So why psychology?
Well, as my experience with my aunt, she had been a clinical psychologist, and so with her sort of probably early influences, and me really wanting to understand further more, and always wanting to create the solution. Still, I thought I need to also learn about all aspects. So it wasn't only psychology. I studied sociology and psychology together. So and that actually was the societies, and that actually on the other side, like how the individual and how the abnormal psychology, how the normal psychology, and how actually we can also go that sort of like extra mile to help work on the solutions. So it actually was exactly that's why I call my parents and my sort of immediate surroundings was my first practice ground, I guess.
Yeah, indeed. And that made you extremely ready to become an entrepreneur at the young, ripe age of 21 when you set up your company, which exists to this day. Tell us about that moment for you. What made you decide to set up your own firm rather than nice girl like you going and get a nice job with one of the major conglomerates in Turkey? That would have been very easy. You took the hard way. Why is that?
Well, again, believing in the sense of responsibility, solution, believing in bringing something as an added value, and probably I got that DNA from my father, and that's why I felt that responsibility as more like heavily rather than just doing the normal, just doing the ordinary. I probably wanted or had that urge to really prove myself, and probably I was a bit impatient with that, having that drive, and obviously we have that ignorance bliss, I guess. Obviously, so I had to just jump out there, and I had all the energy in the world that I was thinking could be necessary. Maybe I wasn't even thinking. That's the whole thing. That's why I thought the urge to serve. I thought the urge that I could solve certain problems. I thought that I could bring something, and I thought there was no boundary. Actually, I thought there was no sort of like it was like that. Nothing is impossible sort of attitude.
Yes, indeed, and you demonstrated that because in the last 30 years, I mean, the country, Turkey, has fundamentally transformed. And you were at the helm and at the beginning of a lot of these births. You were there at the birth of Turkcell, for example. You were there at the birth of many other companies. Tell us some of your firsts that you had in life. Potentially you hired some of the earliest people in some of the biggest telcos and other companies. Share with us your early journey.
That again is really very much shaped with exactly what I have just shared, explained. That attitude actually was really very much like wanting to understand what will be accomplished, what is actually the vision, as you would call it, what is actually the values, and how actually we can bring some solution beyond their imagination, and that will be a talent actually. So it was like me. I always code it as it takes to be a talent yourself, to recruit a talent, to identify a talent, and then to really then help that the other talent, because you can't go into that realm with a sort of like many. I mean, we are, none of us, we're not like perfect, but really at least you have to get the fundamentals right, because otherwise if you have an ethics problem, if you have another problem, so that's why I call it that integrity. And so with all of that, I think those values helped me to really understand what they were maybe calling it as a short-term problem. I always brought to them a longer term. I always sort of like, well, but they will face this. I don't know how I did it with no experience, probably. That is the magic. That is the magical part, and that is what I call that higher level connectedness, which was actually just throwing in front of me the solutions. So the solutions just was flowing in that sense. So I had the possibility of recruiting for, as you mentioned, from the early 90s for an organization like Turkcell, for about like probably every year almost 200 people. I had to work with the CEOs. I had to work with them to really figure out how the business would be actually developing outside the country even. So many industries. I helped them to really look at like what sort of talent they would be needing and what the talent would be expecting from them. So again, this was back to our earlier communication, like the sort of like how do we connect and how do we, in the midst of challenges, make them see and believe in themselves more than maybe they really are able to see. So that is why we brought in, I would say, especially with my attitude of like can-do attitude, I would call it probably, that actually brought in different solutions in the talent space. Because, and even sometimes I had to tell them that no, we can't look for this talent outside. you already have so and so in your organization, and we have to assess that talent and show you the potential so that we can really actually work with him, with her, and to bring him in 6 months' time into a level that this person will be a better solution than that you would actually recruit from elsewhere. So it was not like a typical headhunter's perspective. It was always like thinking for them, thinking with them, and then looking for the best and putting the best effort, really, that was ever possible, and with that integrity, I would say, all the time.
So in that first decade of your business life, I met you. I remember that very, very fondly, and I remember I was with Dow Jones and Dow Jones Telerate, and we were excelling, and we were doing really, really well. However, we had talent problems, we had profitability problems, and we had a team and pulling together. And I still, to this day, give you credit for this, that you helped me understand what is a whole-grained company. You helped me understand that I was, the high I person and high D person going out there, making stuff happen, sell, sell, sell. And I was rewarding those people for that reason. And I was forgetting the weak side of my business side. And I wasn't focusing on detail and process and stuff like that. And I struggle sometimes with that to this day. And you profiled all our company, including myself, and finally came to that conclusion. And that was the beginning of our friendship. That was the beginning of initially professional and now at a very, very personal level. And so I'm firstly very grateful to you for having given me that early insight in life, in my business life. And I have used that every single time I hire people, sometimes intentionally and other times intuitively. But both cases, I am much, much more aware than a lot of other CEOs out there. So I thank you as a young Ayse Oztuna guiding me through that. And then we ended up becoming even more successful in Turkey. So any thoughts? I know you were in kindergarten school at that stage, 25, 27 years ago, but any comments, any thoughts on how we started?
I think again that was the I think the secret formula or sauce that actually I never came into any such engagement with pre-cooked ideas. So I really gave the best of me to really understand what was going on, and I had to be truthful and honest to give you the feedback. And that's why I need to thank you, as at that age, seeing me as a kid, like you gave the opportunity that you really listened and you really took it seriously. So I was actually given that opportunity, like in your case, by many other big businessmen, that they really trusted me because they saw that genuine that I wasn't coming with any calculation or any sort of like pre-cooked idea, I call it, but really rather, with a very sort of genuine, like, how can we do better? And so that really, I think, with our engagement as well as many others that I was able to help, that they really actually gave me the possibility to work with them, to what we today call like to help them reinvent themselves, to help experiment. Like what can go worse, because if we are analyzing the problem, the situation, then they really thought that I was coming with left and right side of the brain, with heart and mind. And so it was like really, I think we were able to sort of like collaborate to bring the best in those organizations. In your case, it was exactly like that. So I wasn't doing it, but we were doing it together with yourself, because you really had that also faith, I could call it, as I refer to that. Faith was very important. Belief, maybe we could call it, but really to have that confidence and trust. That we could work on the solution together, because it cannot be otherwise, like me coming in with my formula and like trying to sort of like pushing it in. But that is what is happening today around us. That is not working.
Indeed. And your approach was building relationships, understanding the problem, as I saw it, and what problem is there to solve, and a very consultative approach. And I think, to me, that was your unique differentiation, your secret sauce.
Like today, I would call it again, like sorry to interrupt, but like from transactional to transformational, I call it for many years. So it's never a transactional attitude that we actually can be successfully a solution provider or partner. Rather, we have to have that sort of like actually vision or depth also. Yes, on the surface, it looks like a certain specific area that needs to be maybe treated. But if you are coming in with a very superficial approach, that's why I was talking about dilemma earlier on. I have to have that depth. I have to have that understanding. I have to have the both long-term and the short-term in mind, because you have a short-term sort of a need for remedy. But then again, you have to have a longer-term perspective so that you're not losing your current talent in the organization. That high potential will be very difficult sort of to again like attract from the outside market. But this today is even more, but that's what I was doing even in the early 90s, because that was the very fundamental that I was thinking, that with integrity we have to approach that, and you have to have that understanding, because without that nothing will be possible, in fact.
You touched upon an extremely important word, which both you and I work on regularly, and that the word is trust. What do you think is, and since we are talking voices of the future, and you are a voice into the future, what is your view on trust as we see it today? How much importance do you give to it?
Well, it's basic, so fundamental, really, that you can't build anything without trust. And again, with the sort of like my again dilemma, sort of like I guess today's obsession with me is like, we have to understand the dilemma. So even if we are paying lip service to it, we are being tested today. That do we really trust? Do we have, maybe that's why I refer to faith. Do we have the faith really in ourselves, in everything that is actually happening from the universal truth around us? And do we really understand it? And do we put the right effort, best effort to understand? That is why trust is at the moment is like, maybe we are just not appreciating the depth and what we need to do as individuals in today's world. And so many are unfortunately lost. They have mental challenges, they have adaptation problems, and they think they are looking for solutions elsewhere, whereas
Sure.
they have to go within themselves. So that I would quote that there was this wonderful book at one time that like we were like reading crazy. I think it was like early 2000s, Conversations with God. If you don't go within, you go without. So it is really very important that we actually first of all understand how we trust and how we are accordingly engaging. So again, back to, yes, there is the relationship side, but then the first relationship we have is with ourselves and with every very immediate surroundings, relations we have around us. That means families, parents, siblings, etc. And so that is very important. Like, how do we face this? How do we encounter? How do we face given the conflicts around us? Because there's a lot of conflict of interest that we create or that is being created, and then from higher up there we are presenting, are you this or are you that? So life is all about choices. That's why I always have been privileged, really, to choose trust and to choose faith. I would call just as equally important, and that is a very big I would say exam or sort of test that we are put through this life, because every time we make those choices, then that is shaping us, and that is actually we are actually coming out of it sort of more profound and deeper, and realizing our potential fundamentally is only possible through these sort of like connections But that first connection with truthful and trusting approach is really within ourselves. And that's why I always also go back to resurrection and reinvention. And reinvention is only going to be possible if we are really going through that truthfully and trusting attitude. With that attitude, how we are able to face the death of certain things, and maybe that is also connected to the letting go or radically accepting certain things. But that is again only possible with trust, faith, and honesty, and that is sometimes requiring sort of like that, like I call it brutal. That's why I call it maybe radical acceptance.
Radical acceptance is a very interesting concept. I'll stay with trust because we're talking about voices of the future, whether it's future of work, the future of talent, the future of technology like ethics, ethics and stuff in AI. I think it's one of the fundamental elements there is trust. So when you look at the future of work and the future of talent, with all of these new technologies and elements coming in, what are your thoughts on that? What does the young talent need to be, and what do us as the older people need to accept or need to look for?
Well, again, that is exactly, I think, what we have just talked about. Really, very much, I think, awareness. With awareness and consciousness, any talent, not only young, but young or any talent at their ages of 60. I think with awareness, consciousness, and responsibility, they should not give up from, because people can give up and they then tend to make some fundamentally wrong decisions. Yeah. And they give up from their lives. They give up and then they look like they've been treated unfairly. Yeah. And that is not correct. Yeah. Something terribly went wrong somewhere, but only you can correct it with that sort of like working on yourself. So that's why in your organization of life, there's the primary talent yourself. So you will be having that responsibility and attitude to actually bring it out of whatever darkness, whatever actually, and there's always going to be, as you always also would refer as in Quran, like after the darkest moments, you come into a light, and that light is special. So that is why whatever age of talent, I guess people tend to give up very, very easily, very quickly, or they tend to listen to others who don't have those in place. And then they are very superficial. Then they are very much like, just like maybe they know it, and that's why I use the word like paying lip service to it is something different. So that's why we have to be really looking into these sort of like, I think it's we really need to give that value, or that, how to say, everything around it, and it requires a lot of work on ourselves and be responsible for that. But that is also maybe again heavy, but also bringing lightness. Maybe that from dark moments coming into lightness. That's why I call this, and it should not be like making us more confused. It should rather actually bring that strength within us, and so that we are really taking this energy to the world and be that what we are speaking about, be that responsible leader, be that talent who really can change the world. Otherwise, you're just like, it's an advertisement, like it's just a sort of tip of the iceberg, and you're not going into anything deeper. And the first person who's going to actually benefit or see the harm is yourself again. But how do you come out of it? So that's why the formula would be really, how do you work with your consciousness and really actually are understanding this philosophically, and at the same time sort of like with that depth and with that sort of like today's world needs many solutions. And what is your role in it? What is that role that you're going to play and contribute? Otherwise, it's not just going to be that oh, I came up with this product and this is going to just, no, it's not going to work that way, because then it's not going to be connected to many things that's going to actually create value. It's just going to be a gimmick. It's just going to be tricky. It's not just going to be transactional. And that's going to have its own short life sort of on the shelf. So that's why I would rather go back to like how the talent actually perceives oneself, how the connections are built. And that is number one responsibility of a talent. Because, of course, again, life is all about choices. You can always choose to stay on the top of a mountain and pray and just, like meditate. and that'll do you good if that's your choice and you're happy with it. But if you're not, then we're in the everyday hustle and everyday sort of like struggle. Then we better take our roles seriously. So you just cannot say, okay, no, I'm just resigning from my responsibilities. Then you have to see the consequences. So that's why, again, like really a lot of working on us, on ourselves, indeed is so important. And so will make us, I think, fundamentally shifting something in ourselves and fundamentally helping the world with our own roles and responsibilities, bring the best in others as we are, and in fact, helping ourselves to bring the best in ourselves.
Indeed. So let's talk a couple of data points before we go into the future. You, with your assessments, approximately over the last, say, 20 years or so, how many hundreds of thousands have you done? And the second data question is, approximately how many people have you directly or indirectly hired in the last, say, 25 years? How large is that number? I just want to get a handle on the size of that.
Yes, that's a great question, actually, because I'm sometimes also puzzled with the numbers of assessments that I actually have been leading a wonderful team, and really that's of course not me, it's the entire team, but probably I'm, as they call me, like the master, master chef, like training all the time, never giving up, and always sort of like, as we call it, like in God we trust, the rest we assess constantly, and we try to bring that talent, we try to sort of question whether we are doing it enough, etc. So it's like a clinic approach, but really the numbers are quite big. It's about probably we have assessed about more than 450,000 professionals, and these could be at their early stages of like building businesses, startups, as we would refer to them, or in their later sort of board member roles, chairman roles, family members who are trying to convert into better board members. So it's like probably approximately we could say around 500,000 talents, I call it, talent from different generations. Actually, we have been privileged to work with them in different levels, different capacities over the 32 years of my business life at the moment.
You are also the managing partner of Ayse Oztuna. When did you start with
founding partner?
Founding partner. I beg your pardon. I stand corrected. You are the founding partner of Ayse Oztuna in Turkey. When did you do this, and how does that shape the way you are looking at leadership, at boards, and as an impact in your society?
Well, it's again very much because of the need that Turkey actually had, that need to work more internationally in the 1997. Actually, I had the discussions with many international companies that were actually bringing their projects to me, by the way, till from 1991 to 1997. So in fact, those days, one of them actually bringing me business was actually telling me that we have to buy you. And I said, what did I do wrong to deserve this? Why would you want to buy me? and we were in heavy discussions that I was actually trying to explain to them. They were coming from US, and one of the largest executive search firms at that time in US. And they were giving me their projects that they were trusting me and I was working with their New York teams at that time, and so I was thinking that I did something wrong to deserve, and that discussion was taking place in 1996. And so, and funnily enough, they were doing their due diligence at the time, because for me it was like open, clearly, I was working on their project, so of course they had every right to audit and do their due diligence. But anyway, so after those discussions of heavily, like, I have this huge ambition to create value for the younger younger talent of this country, and they were only into executive search, and they never understood or appreciated really my assessment approach in Turkey. And so that was like really a fundamental difference, and that actually pushed me, like, I realized that there will be a difficulty to work together, and it will be, of course, possible maybe for me to continue to work for their projects, to recruit the CEOs, to recruit the sort of like critical talent for their clients' organizations. But then started that the discussions went through that whoever would actually allow me to keep my original assessment business, actually would be my future partner, so that they would actually either allow the space, even if they didn't understand, because for the entire executive search world, it was pretty far-fetched idea. For them, it was like assessment, that's something completely useless. For them, it was like not appreciated, because executive search actually was something completely for the executive search from US, actually was completely a different business. Assessment would be only a roadblocker assessment. Why would you do assessments? Because you have a talent that you identified in New York and can potentially relocate to Los Angeles. Or when you have identified a talent in Toronto, then how you can obviously transfer to Sydney. So it was the CV, the curriculum, that they were only betting on. Whereas from my perspective, from 1991 onwards, I was only pushing my clients to understand and appreciate the potential of the talent and how we can actually create value with that. So that's how actually we actually decided in 1997 that a new I will establish Odgers Bernson's. Back then the name was Ryan Berndsen. Actually, we had quite a big, large U.S. operations with 12 sort of offices in U.S. at that time. Unfortunately, that part of the business went bust with the 9/11 and dot-com crisis, if you remember, at that time around 2001. So that actually brought us together with Odgers Berndsen. But my partnership started in 1997 as a result of all this, what I have explained. That we have founded Odgers Berndsen Turkey business, and also brought in this assessment view, an integrated way of looking at executive search and bringing a sort of holistic view of things at the top level, board level, and as well as the C-suite, and how we can actually make it more transformational experience for all involved, the clients, the candidates, the talent, our partners, colleagues, everywhere.
Understood. Ayse, I have to ask you that question again. So Ayse, you are the founding partner of Odgers Berndsen, and you've been with them for over 25 years. Can you explain your role and how it all started, and what are you doing today?
Well, necessity is the mother of invention. So that was a necessity at the time. So international collaboration was already happening, and I was already working with different executive search firms, as they were trusting in me, my ability to find the best person, best talent for them. But then we came to a point that we had to partner with one of them, and I was asked by Odgers Berndsen to start their business in Turkey, and I was the one who actually really brought in the assessments and executive search integrated view, holistic view, and how to bring this to the boards, and how to actually create more value with this holistic view was the challenge and the opportunity for the executive search world. But as the last years, we have seen most of the executive search firms, even from US, actually investing heavily into assessments and the leadership advisory, as we call it today. But at that time, it was pretty early. And for them, it was actually a challenge and not really preferred because it was really questioning the talent at a much deeper level, which normally would not be preferred.
Yeah. You have always been a pioneer and you've been pushing the boundaries. But the wonderful things that we see now is that hundreds of CEOs, directly or indirectly, have been engaged by you and CFOs and CHROs. So you actually have an influence and a sort of impact within the Turkish business community, which is huge. And one of the great initiatives that I've seen that you have come in, and I've had the privilege of working with you on that, and that's your program related to the youth, and that is the CEO for a Day program. Can you share how you started? And I know you've done amazing things, so why did you share it with us on that?
And that also actually was quite, as you reminded, quite a challenge because the original program started in 2007 in sort of like global Ojes Benson organization. But then it was for us in Turkey, even though we have this young talent, it was very difficult to bring this sort of like concept, like how will the today's leaders really connect at a deeper level and really have a completely different experience with a younger talent, so that took me like about 10 years to really we could only start by 2017 because we wanted actually all the senior leaders in the business community to partner with us and to really appreciate and understand and bring this awareness to their businesses, back to their businesses. So it was like a more like what I called it, like a collective wisdom platform. Yep. So we had the good fortune of working with international partners like yourself and others, and we wanted to really bring that sort of like again, like what actually the CEO needs to hear. Maybe it's not even, I call it mutual mentoring at certain stages, but it's more again bringing that understanding, that depth and that experience part, and how to give the CEO the chance to see the sort of like the new generation technologies, how with the new generation talents, this will be disrupting their sort of thinking or bringing a new sort of way of doing things. And so this all was very, again, fundamentally like coming with that truthful approach that actually I wanted to not just bring it as a challenge, but really work around it together, because I never had a ready answer. We were seeing many failures, many disastrous crisis situations. So I wanted to really bring that possibility to engage with a younger talent and to see the entire solution from a completely different mindset. And because that was a mindset problem, according to me.
Yeah, and I've been involved with you since 17, 18. I remember coming to all of your sessions.
2017, yes.
17, exactly. So for me, it was it's quite interesting. I used the 60-40-20 rule, that the 60-somethings are making the big strategic decisions, the 40-somethings are executing, whereas the 20-somethings, which are actually the youth and the younger generation, which is formulating products and digital natives and so on. And there's a 2-generation gap. So the 65-year-old telco CEO cannot make a decision for the 19-year-old university student. It's too far away. And your program actually helped to bridge that, and I've always found that fascinating. My experience in the early days was that there was a cultural issue in terms of young, because Turkey is a very respectful environment. So the young people were being super respectful. However, the Gen Z that's coming through right now, they don't care. They just say boom. So I think our senior executives are becoming more attuned to receiving feedback from young people, and that's been very positive. And you've been a great pioneer on that. Ayse, I'm a CEO, and I'm like a lot of your clients and partners and so on. What's the advice that you're giving to me on a day-to-day basis in terms of talent, in terms of what we need to do looking forward?
Well, as I think I was referring to this earlier on, it's really very much like how do we engage with the talent we have within ourselves, and then how do we connect the dots and the talent all around us. So it's like not just one other agenda item, but or like just we would be devoting so much of our time. But it is so fundamental, has to be so much like intertwined and so much sort of like an integrated view, and we have to work on that, because otherwise it just happens to be, no, that is my CHRO's role. Of course you have to work with other individuals in whatever title they have, and it's also, by the way, sort of the titles doesn't mean anything today. So we really have to give a great sort of value and thought and do everything that is necessary. So it will vary from individual to individual, organization to organization, situation to situation. But unless we do that, it's just really very much like we are not doing what actually will be helping you in the longer run or even in the midterm. And that is what we need to understand, appreciate, and that's why the radical acceptance part, that we really have to give ourselves the right score. Like, have I done the fundamentals? You know, like it's not about like X hours, you know, or working with this, or oh, I have done all of that, but didn't happen. No, we have to give ourselves brutally, that's why I call it brutally honest feedback, because no one else will. And then we can then take it to a new plan, a fresh plan with a new mindset and with a new responsibility sense. That's when we can all then come up with the right approach. And still we have to review, because then there is not going to be a formula that, okay, this is my first quarter and what happens in the next quarter. So we have to make sure that we have that responsibility and accountability around it.
Understood. We are going through a transformation decade, and I talk about this a lot. I have spent a lot of time with you in Turkey. On the one hand, Turkish businesses are extremely successful, and they're doing very well. On the other hand, when we now look at the future, they may not be ready for the shift and the change that is necessary. So as I always quote my professor, Marshall Goldsmith, by the way, who is going to be writing the foreword for this whole program, Voices of the Future, Marshall's book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And that is one of the things I'm finding regularly in Istanbul when I'm working together with you, is super successful people, but it's that reinvention, that mindset shift, that complete moving forward, that diminished, diffusing the immune system is the single largest challenge that I see as a CEO. What are your thoughts?
Exactly. It's the fundamental truth that we've been talking about. It's really very much that's like the life cycles. Like, is it making profits today? Then what is that sustainability agenda on the board's agenda? Is it that we will not be able to receive certain investments in the shorter term, or is it further down? It has to be looked with that. That's why a different lens. That is not otherwise really going to be possible, and that is actually what we have been referring to as the radical review that we have to give ourselves, and then still come up with the best values, best effort, and the best version of ourselves. And that is reinvention. And it is supposed to be transformational, because otherwise it's just going to be like ticking, okay, we have the sustainability agenda, we have the talent agenda, we have all these other and then we're looking at profits, and then we're looking at other matter. But then the inflation in this country is somewhere that we're not able to even sort of clearly name. But that's why I would mainly say we have to go back and really with that courage, with that integrity, fundamental truth, and that trust, consciousness, we have to have that responsibility to really look at the balance sheet again. Yeah. Not in terms of numbers, but in terms of everything that we're talking about, everything that really is like, are we coaching the relationships? Are we looking at the space around us? Are we looking at how the people are engaged? Or are we talking about silos? What is happening with the CFO, CHRO, CTO, etc.? No, we have to look into as individuals, as relationships, as everything connected to each other. Because then there is that unspoken part, which is in fact that energy, which is shaping all of us. And then that brings us into that very sort of like unhappy situation, not satisfied, unfortunate situation, whatever numbers are there. Yep. That is why it's very important that we look at it as a whole, with a holistic view, and really be accountable, be responsible, and then we will be really happy with everything, that whatever results it will look like, definitely it will actually take us into a better future. Whatever future holds for us is completely, of course, up to God, but we will definitely then uncover a truth that is actually better than what we were actually planning for.
True. Let me ask you a very difficult question, and that is that in 2030, according to various research from Dell, from Accenture, from various other groups, is that 70% of the jobs that will exist in 2030 do not exist today. So therefore, how are you hiring people in jobs that don't yet exist, for skills and attributes that are not yet clear that we need for? So how do you hire people today for tomorrow?
Well, exactly. This is again back to the fundamentals. We have always been, in fact, doing that. So we have to be aware of that, even though the change is dramatic. Again, we are looking at all of these, the data, the intelligence, and that is actually seemingly frightening. But in fact, we always have been doing that, especially in Turkey. That's why we thrive on chaos. That's why we thrive on crisis. So that is why we have to, today, in the global situation that we are facing, really go back to like, what is the potential? Who really wants to work? Who really wants to do, like work on the solutions? Because it is requiring a lot of uncertainty to deal with what we were referring to with you as well, like VUCA world. But it was there for a long time, in fact. So that is why we have to make sure that the talent is understanding one's potential and working with integrity on the solutions. Then the titles will come. Then the solutions will come, because then the things will work in a different way with robots or with other stuff. But if you don't have that, then you will be seeing a talent working with ChatGPT and cheating. Whereas you will be actually looking at a talent which actually will be really bringing extraordinary value because of the way they have worked with ChatGPT or other solutions that will actually will be sort of like at our service, quite not in the long term, but really in the matter of maybe months time. So that is what we need to be ready for that, and that is what is requiring that experimentation that we have been referring to. That is why it's very important that we have to prepare with our sort of like a mindset to work on the solutions, which is completely uncertain. And if we are bringing that sort of like with an attitude of like, oh, I worked on this and now I'm a psychologist, or no, I'm just a doctor, or I'm just an engineer, or I was actually trained to become like to work on the codes. No, it all has to come together. Whatever actually we have to complete and whatever our role can be in this very sort of like needy world, then that will be very, very valuable in any case. So that's the shift that we need to prepare for. That's the uncertainty. That's the beauty of it as well, that we will be actually thriving. But if we don't have that attitude, if we don't have that mindset, maybe you will be earning certain amount today, but then you will be actually losing that job in the very near future, because there will not be that need. And so fundamentally, we have to be working on ourselves as a talent, and then engaging with everyone around us, and don't leave it with just one organization, just one other corporation, or just one corporation level agenda, and then just don't sort of like criticize, oh, what happened? That wasn't in my plans. I didn't order this sort of like, or I didn't want for this. So you have to be prepared from your within, like how are you going to become the solution? And that is how actually we need to exactly sort of like help those individuals, that talent, to prepare. And this could be through our executive search services, that identifying them if they're stuck in one organization that don't have that mindset, to bringing them to a place that they will be thriving on, working with other talents on the solutions, or from the assessment part, or from the development part, from our leadership advisory approach. But that doesn't matter. Fundamental is the values and everything that we can build on it. Otherwise, robots will not be doing justice to whatever we can achieve in this beautiful planet Earth and beyond.
As a futurist, I have a perspective, and I'll share that with you. And that is that technology is omnipresent. And anything that can be digitized will be, because it'll be a million times faster and a million times cheaper. But anything and everything that cannot be digitized, love, harmony, ethics, trust, intuition, imagination, creativity, soul, spirit, judgment, all of these things will be a million times more valuable. Therefore, as we go into the future, we don't need to be more technological. We need to be more human. So the human attributes of people is, when I'm hiring people today, I'm looking at their human attributes. I'm looking at their ability to adapt and shift and be imaginative and creative, because technology will keep changing and all the boring stuff will go to ChatGPT and others anyway. I am looking for people with that kind of energy, with that kind of humanity, with that kind of adaptability and creativity and imagination. Very difficult to find, very difficult to develop. I dare say this is one of your biggest challenges at the moment.
And still, as you know, that saying is like, you still need 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. So we must not forget about hard work, discipline. Really, that is the piece I'm just referring to constantly, as like we have to be creative, yet we have to be sort of like so disciplined at the same time, that we're not giving up, that we're not just going for the easiest solution. Yes, we're looking for a solution which will flow and which will just be quickly a solution, but at the same time, we should not sort of forget about the values and how it is maybe spoiling other things, so that it should be serving the bigger, higher purpose, and we shouldn't be disregarding that in a way. So that is like constant values and constant sort of like recognition, appreciation of the bigger system around us. That is why I'm calling even what is happening between relationships, or between the silos, as we call it, so that the whole of the picture, or whole of the bigger organization is benefiting from all of that. And accordingly, the individual talent is automatically, naturally, sort of like seeing the value coming back to oneself, and which is a bigger satisfaction, in fact.
Indeed, I'm looking at, from what you're talking about, at the paradoxes of leadership. On the one hand,
exactly.
you have to be a hero, but you also have to be humble. On the one hand,
I call it like and. So it is not either or any longer.
Yes.
It is really and that is why we are talking about like being that catalyst, being that connector, being that sort of like really appreciating everything, and how we can actually just not like talking about just coaching, but really appreciating and bringing in that collaborator spirit into everything, then that is going to be a world that we can really produce effortlessly more wealth or more prosperity than we could ever imagine. That
Indeed.
is the piece we are missing out, I believe.
Indeed. My final question, Ayse, is that if you were to leave a little message in a bottle and 10 years from now people will pick it up, what will Ayse today, with your wisdom and your knowledge and your understanding of the world, as you project yourself in the future, in 2033, somebody will sort of pick something up and say, Ayse wrote this. What would that one simple message be to inspire them in the future?
Well, it's quite a difficult question, Tarek. Never give up and keep on sharing the light and sort of like the wisdom and all of this wonderful energies, all the good fortune, and just keep reinventing yourself and carry it and spread it around. So that would be really, I think, don't give up.
Thanks. Ayse, it's been an absolute privilege and pleasure talking to you. What a wonderful session, philosophical, in-depth, human, personal, and you are a genuine thought leader.
Authentic.
And authentic, absolutely, and trusting, and all of those.
And that's you, Tarek.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, and I'm very grateful to you for your friendship, for your partnership, and for the connection and humanity that we have. And long may it last, and I'm very grateful for that. So thank you very much indeed.